Hi, my name's Danielle. I'm a PHP and Laravel developer predominantly, but I've been doing a lot more full stack stuff recently. So I'm going to talk to you about how to bake accessibility into your web application. So in order to do that, you'll have to know what accessibility is, why it's important, and who it matters to. So if we're ready to go, we can start baking. So accessibility means that something can be easily obtained or used. But in terms of web development, that means that there's equal opportunities for people to use your site or service, regardless of their ability or disability. So why is accessibility important? I know you probably can't see this at the back so well. But this quote says, the impact of disability is radically changed on the web because the web removes barriers to communication and interaction that many people face in the physical world. So I like this quote because it shows that the web can be used as a tool to break down barriers for people with disabilities. But it's important to note that the web can also bring up barriers for people with disabilities if accessibility isn't taken into account. So personally, I believe that as developers, we have an ethical and moral obligation to make the web accessible to all. So who benefits from good accessibility? So firstly, people with disabilities. So at least 1 in 5 people in the UK have a disability. There are lots of different types of disabilities, such as blindness and hearing loss, and physical, neurological, and cognitive disorders, which you'll have to take into account for when designing a website. There's also temporary disabilities you might have. So if you're pregnant and you can't reach your keyboard properly, or if you lose your glasses on a night out and can't see anymore, or if you break both your arms skateboarding and can't use your keyboard and mouse anymore. There's also situational limitations, such as if you're working from home in the garden in the summer and you can't see your screen properly because it's sunny, or so if you're using a smaller screen, such as a smartwatch, so your website will be a lot smaller. And yeah, if you're watching a video, but you're somewhere that you can't listen to audio, so if you're watching YouTube at the back of a meeting, you want to be able to have subtitles enabled. So also matters to businesses because annually around £6.9 billion is lost to accessible e-commerce annually. So if your website isn't accessible and you're selling something, someone will go to a competitor. So yeah, don't want that to happen. Also, Domino's was recently sued for not having an accessible website by someone who had a blindness disability. So navigating the web, how do people navigate the web if they have a disability? So screen readers are quite a common one. So if you tab through a website, it reads out the content out loud. It'll describe what the buttons are and the links are. And you can add extra tags which describe things for people that can't necessarily see the screen. We've also got screen magnifiers, which enlarge certain parts of the screen. There's speech input, so using your voice to navigate a site. And motion tracking, so you can use like part of your body or your facial expressions to move and tab through a website, which is quite interesting. I don't know if a lot of people know about that. So hopefully you're interested and want to find out some more. So I'm going to do a quick fire round of accessible things you should include in your website. So with images, most people know about images that you need alt text, but your alt text should be just like have the same effect your image has as to someone who can see the image. So it's got to have the same like feel as it would do as when it appeared on the page. So any text in the image needs to be added to the alt text. Any images of graphs, the alt text needs to explain what the graph is conveying. Any decorative images, like a nice squiggle or just like a picture that doesn't mean anything, should have its alt text set to blank because as you can imagine, it's quite annoying to be tabbing through an image and it's just like image of person doing this. It's like what does that actually mean to me because I can't see it. Okay, so resizing. You can get some browser extensions that resize the text on page, and that just resizes the text only. I know you can't really see that image, but in a lot of cases, if you have like a set height on an element, when you enlarge the text, it just like, you just can't see it. It just gets completely cut off. So it's something to bear in mind when you're designing components. Colors. So there's a minimum contrast requirement you need to meet for certain levels of accessibility. These are different for large text and smaller text, and also like icons, like arrows and such. So larger text needs to have like less of a contrast ratio than smaller text. So there are also some like extension add-ons that you can get, so you can emulate what it's like for someone with color blindness, so you can see how they see the screen. Also, different types of screens display colors in different ways. So this week I was developing a calendar chart where you had to block off certain dates and times, and I named a variable light pink. And someone said to me yesterday, why is this called light pink? It's grey. And I moved my screen from the fancy screen onto my laptop screen and realised it was actually just my screen showing it as pink, not grey. So yeah, maybe look idiot. So keyboard accessibility. All actionable elements in your pages should be tabbable. So as you tab through your links, as you can see, there's like a kind of like orange thing as standard, like a rectangle that goes around every tabbable element. You can change the color of this, and you can also make it thicker and stand out more, because this also has to meet a contrast ratio too. So some other things, ARIA labels. If you've got a modal open and it's got an X to shut it, that doesn't really mean much to someone with a screen reader. So you should add a label to it that says something like close. Titles for your web pages. Titles should be meaningful rather than just decorative. So no like ASCII art in your title of your web page, because if someone's trying to think of what website they've got open in each tab, if it's just ASCII or fancy squiggles, that's quite irritating for someone. It's also not very descriptive. And headings. So typically you should only have one H1 element per page, and if you stack up all of your headings together, like in order of like H1, H2, H3, it should read out like a contents page would. So it's kind of a good way of testing whether or not your headings are in the right order. If you were to just strip it out to just the headings, think, is this logical? Does this make sense? So if you can't see at the back, I've got an H1 of my favorite cakes, an H2 of lemon drizzle, and an H3 of how to make a lemon drizzle cake. So that is my favorite cake. So yeah, just because something is at H1 doesn't mean it's the biggest heading on the page. You should just use CSS to restyle these. So yeah, piece of cake. Sounds really easy. It is. So some of the tools that I use when developing contrast analyzers. So I'm on a Linux machine, so you don't get a lot of software naturally for it. So I just use a Chrome extension, which is like a little dropper tool, so I can pick out a color in a page. So you pick out the color of your text and the color of the background, and I go onto a site and put both those colors in, and it will show whether or not that meets the contrast ratio. Screen readers, so you can download some screen readers and turn them on and just tab through your website and think, oh my God, is this terrible for someone with a screen reader, or is it fine? It's really annoying when I have it on when I'm developing, so that kind of forces me to develop something in a better way for screen readers. And audits, I'm not sure if you know that Chrome developer tools have some audits built into it called Lighthouse. So you go audits, accessibility, run audits, and there's loads of useful things that will check about your website. It will check like how good it is as a PWA for accessibility and lots of other things. But it will highlight parts of the page where you can improve the accessibility. There's also an extension called Axe that I use that does a similar thing. So yeah, that's the Chrome one on the left and the Axe one on the right. So it'll say, this is for Stack Overflow, by the way. So it's on 73% for accessibility out of 100. So there are some improvements that can be made there. But yeah, it's definitely worth just running this through on the website you're working on. So how do we bake in accessibility to your web application? I think the first most important thing is to challenge bad accessibility, and that starts at home. It starts with yourself. So just going through your own website and thinking, is there anything that I can do to improve this? Integrating it into your code review process. So hopefully most of you here do code reviews, I hope. So just calling out bad practice and accessibility when you're reviewing code. Leave a section of code in a better state than when you found it. Hopefully you're doing this anyway, but this hopefully means you can sneak in some accessibility improvements without your PM getting too caught up in charging a client for that if it's just a quick, easy fix you can do. Build it into your ticketing process. So just how you would build in your time for testing and planning, just like add in a bit of extra time if you're doing markup to make your content accessible. Ideally, the best thing to do is plan it from the start if you're at the start of a project or in a greenfield project, just so that you can integrate this throughout what you're doing. And the last thing I want to say about it is really budgeting. If you're a project manager in here, it's just something to consider to add into the budget, to add some extra time to make sure that any of your markup is accessible. So yeah, hopefully you have the tools to make an accessible website and make sure that the web is a fair and accessible place for all, regardless of ability or disability. So thank you.